Hey guys, just before this episode starts, I want to put a little disclaimer in. We recorded this episode, I'd say, 2 days before Zaum, the developer of this game, basically imploded. If you don't know the story, we won't go into too much detail, but the creative leads of Disco Elysium were forced out of the company. The owners of Zaum now claim that there were some bad work practices by them. The creators shot back and said there's some dodgy finance things going on and they were forced out of the company. I don't know all the details yet, but if you're wondering why we don't bring this up at any point during the podcast, it's because we didn't know about it yet. So yeah, enjoy. Hello and welcome to From the Top, our Metacritic Countdown podcast. I'm Michael and I'm joined by Sean and Stephen Hill. And this episode, we are talking about Disco Elysium. So this is probably the most recent game we're going to talk about for a while. It came out in 2019 and as is obvious, due to its place on the list at number 11 in all-time highest-rated games on Metacritic, it got a lot of really good reviews when it came out. And sort of, I don't want to throw this term around, but it sort of became an instant classic in a way. But we'll be talking through the game and what we feel about playing it now, basically, as we go on. Some info on the game itself. It's a role-playing game, but as we'll get into, not really a traditional role-playing game. Developed by Zaum. I think that's how you say their name. It's spelled ZA/UM. So help me out here, guys, basically.
Zaum.
It sounds like a laser gun or something like that, but yeah. And it was developed in Estonia, which is pretty unique. I'm not sure we're going to come across too many games that are developed in Estonia, to be honest. Pretty cool to see that. Just a little bit about this podcast. 2 quick things for anyone listening. One, this is a very recent game and a very story-focused game. So there will be some spoilers throughout. Just a warning on that. And I recommend you go play this game if you haven't already, because it's amazing. But we will give a spoiler warning before we get into the really dense talking about the ending, etc. Future Michael, who will have edited this episode, will chime in at the end of this sentence to let you know what time code. So Future Michael, take it away. This is Future Michael. So first things first. Fuck you, past Michael, okay? Don't be so condescending and telling me what to do, alright? I'm here, I've edited this whole video for you, you talking shit, edited out every fart noise you made during the recording, done all your laundry that you left for me, and you got very drunk that night and I had to deal with the hangover, so I'm not going to listen to a word you're saying from now on. Secondly, spoilers from around 30 minutes in. That's 30 minutes in. So watch out, guys. Great. He sounds really good as well.
Yeah, fair play to Future Michael. He's professional. He knows what's up.
He's a good guy. I like him. He's not like past Michael who, left me in debt. So another thing to say about this episode is one of the central mechanics of the game is a dice roll, which, you can make skill checks on certain decisions and different actions you take in the game. And it's one of the most gamey parts of the whole thing, really. So we wanted to incorporate that into the podcast. So I'm going to do some dice rolls to read some quotes from the game. So I have some quotes written out here. It's a very well written game. Some of these are funny, some of these are more serious and in depth and really soulful. I'm going to present them all without context, but I'm going to roll the dice and see what quote I get. So let me do the first one here with my little toy dice, and I rolled a 7. So 7 is, Kim, I did a little speed. I hope you don't mind. It was for professional reasons. And that was Harry that read that. So you'll be getting some quotes as we go out through the podcast. And just to start off, just a small anecdote I have about the game. I think I might have mentioned this before on a previous podcast years ago, but before this game came out, around 2018, I'd moved to London and I was a young single guy. So I thought, do you know where the hip happening place is in London? It's probably the Indie Games Festival.
Internet.
So I went out to Dalston to a little bar and I went to a little indie game showcase there. And I played a load of 8-bit platformers and some racing games, and it was pretty cool. Got to talk to some of the developers of them, all of which were really weird because you're playing their game right in front of them, and then after 5 minutes you're sort of like, that was fun, and then they're just staring at you like, what you think?
Yeah, I poured my whole life into this.
And of course, obviously, one of the games was Disco Elysium, so I presume I met some of the guys and girls from Zaum, and I started playing it for a few minutes, and then it crashed the second I left the hotel room at the beginning. And someone came over and apologized and quickly did some coding and fixed it or restarted it or something. But I just sort of awkwardly just walked away from the table and said, no, I'm okay. I wasn't that interested. So
that just reminds me of, do you know that video game documentary with Phil Fish and Fez?
Indie game, yeah.
Yeah, and he's he's at some convention showing off the game and it keeps crashing and he's going mad.
I got to play one of the best rated indie games of all time before it came out, and then just didn't bother.
And you basically said, fuck you, man. I can make a better game.
It came out and it was an instant classic, but I just dismissed it because it crashed once. But anyway, so let's get into the game. We've all played it. Me and Steve completed it. Whereabouts did you get to, Sean, just to quickly put a nail in it?
Whoa, Sean, you didn't finish a game for the podcast?
Oh, wow. Okay, there's plenty of games that you haven't played, Steve.
That's a good counter argument there.
Yeah, out of all the games in the world, there are quite a few I haven't played. All right.
Surprisingly. No, do you want to know actually where in the story ish? Or
do you know what? Let me ask this question, and that might illuminate. Do you know Harry's name yet?
No.
Harry's the main character, basically. And there's spoiler, his name's Harry.
Okay, no, actually, I'm pretty sure I did figure out his name. I can't. It's been a while since I played the game, so some of the names will be a bit lost on me, but I'm pretty sure I've got to the point where I know what he looks like, and I'm pretty sure I figured out his name because I made the call to dispatch and stuff. So
just to interject, isn't the second you start the game when you know what he looks like?
No, is it? Don't you have to find a mirror?
Yeah, you do have to remember what you look like. But no, there is no.
Because I'm pretty sure I left the room though.
Okay, one thing to preface all this is, a very unique and important part of this game is that no two people's experience will be the same. As in, there's very, very branching paths, I should say. So a lot of people who I've talked to this about have said, "Oh, did you get this scene where Kim does this, or did you get the bit where they jumped off of this?" I'm like, "No, I never even heard of those parts. What are you talking about?" So I think there will be. I know there's definitely something near the end that I did that a lot of people didn't do. That, just in case we mention something that you're like, what the fuck are they talking about? It may be that we just had very different experiences with the game.
Well, just to sum up anyway, I'm still on day one. So I haven't got that far. But Jesus Christ, Steve, all right?
Sorry, I just...
still on day one. I haven't played that long. I've played a few hours of it.
This sounds like a confession more than anything.
Yeah, that's it.
So what were your initial thoughts with the game, I guess? Let's keep it with day one for the moment anyway, in terms of story stuff and all. When you get into the game, it's a bit... Well, one thing I have to say is the opening is very disorientating in a great way, in a very immersive way, because Harry, the main character, wakes up with amnesia, so he doesn't know who he is. He doesn't really know how the world functions, to be honest. He has to be explained about very simple concepts. How did you read that? How did you enjoy that part of the game?
I really liked it. I thought it was a really cool way to start off the game, like not knowing anything even about yourself and having to try figure that all out. And like going in, I went in completely blind to this as well, so I didn't know anything about the story. So yeah, it's like really funny as well, like figuring out he's a cop and then he's like, where the fuck am I? What am I doing? And yeah, so I really enjoyed that, the amnesia element of the game.
It's a fantastic way of making you information you learn. Harry learns at the same time, so it puts you in his shoes. Like the part where they say, "Have you taken down the body from around the corner?" And he's like, "What the fuck are you talking about? What body? Why? I've been here a week and I was meant to do something about that." It's a really good way of giving you information, because a thing that happens a lot with games is that you're put into this fantasy world and they have to say, "Oh, you, the Chancellor of the Senate, which runs this country," like they have to speak like that in a very obvious way that like they're giving the information to the player rather than the person. But in this, it's sort of like, Final Fantasy X did this as well, where Tidus has amnesia, so they have to explain, "Oh, this is a temple where we pray to Yevon, the god of our people," and stuff like that.
Do they, just a side note, but do they explain why he has amnesia, or is it just because he got blackout drunk? That's it.
I think they do, depending on your play style. Like, you do kind of know why at the end of it, but you get, depending on how you play, you get a lot more of an explanation. Like, I think I got a fairly solid explanation by the end of the game, but I think that was kind of luck, depending on how I played.
Yeah, that's interesting, Steve, because I would have said it was just that he drank so much, but I guess maybe it's the reasons behind it that get eliminated a bit more.
You do learn why he drank so much, at least in my playthrough. But just what you're saying about like how he's amnesiac and like how everything has to be explained to him, like that is a classic trait of good game design, because you see that in so many classic, like another one that I was thinking of that's quite similar is like Monkey Island. Like first time you play that, the main character comes in and he literally says, "I want to be a pirate." Like that one line tells you everything you need to know. Is like, okay, this guy doesn't know how to do what he's doing and he's coming in here and he's got one purpose, and that's all you need to know. And it's a good explanation as any, that everyone has to explain things to you and tell you what to do. So yeah. And actually, just coming back to your point when you were saying like Final Fantasy X, that they did that as well. Classic example of how not to do it is in Final Fantasy 13, where the entire world and characters have already been established and they're all supposed to know things, and because of that everything is just completely disorienting and you just can't understand what the hell is going on. Yeah,
they're using terms like the fallacy and the crystal of wherever, and you, like they're saying them like you should know what the fuck they're talking about, basically.
Did you say the fallacy?
Are they not the fallacy? What are they called in 13?
Oh no, you're right. It's actually something like the fallacy, but like actually I never realized that it basically sounds like the fallacy.
That's the way I always remember.
The fallacy is the bad guy.
but they use it for comedy a lot as well, which is pretty good. Like they really lean into the amnesiac angle, the fish out of water thing, where like you can tell, like, some of my favorite moments are interactions with Kim, and especially at the beginning where like he's like, "So what's your name?" and you just have to make something up because you have no idea. I love that sort of shit, and like used throughout for basic stuff, but like we're saying, it really fills out the backstory of the area, and that's a lot of the content is like the central sort of true line in the story is the murder investigation, but you delve off into so many other things, like the history of this place, colonialism, the capitalist versus communist sort of thing, fascist ideology coming in, working class versus ruling class. All these different things get explored, but in a pretty organic way. Not in a way like, I love Metal Gear Solid and Hideo Kojima, but he would literally just have a character speak at you for an hour, literally saying all the things I just said, but not in a like organic, like real way. Sorry, I just a random dunk on Hideo Kojima for some reason. But like it's in such stark contrast where it seems to happen organically in Disco Elysium, I feel.
Yeah. I feel like we should probably, just for the benefit of anyone listening and who has never heard of this game before, we should probably like lay out exactly what kind of game this is.
You do that,
like
Steve.
It's kind of fair enough. It is kind of, because almost every other game in this like list that we've done so far, you could easily fit into a category of like platform or open world shooter or something like that. But this one doesn't really have a category that it fits neatly into. The closest thing I could think of was, again, like a point and click adventure similar to Monkey Island, but there's no puzzles involved in it. So the gameplay aspect of it, like you were saying, is the dice roll thing, and you tend to approach problems either through dialogue options or occasionally with like some kind of physicality, depending on your build. And you'll get like a random choice at certain moments. Like, let's say, for example, I don't know, you're in a shop and you see a book that you want, and you have an option to buy the book, or you'll get like a secret or a dice roll option, like a red option, say, try and steal the book. And this will be informed by certain stats you have. So like if you've got your motor skills are like particularly good, and your drama, you've got a lot of points in drama so that you can, I don't know, pull things off without a hitch, then that hopefully boosts your chances of pulling this off. But then there's external things at play here as well. Like, so for example, if you already talk to the bookshop owner, and if she's suspicious of you because of the way you acted, that lowers your chances of being able to pull this off. So then, of course, you have the dice roll, and that's kind of your, like, you've got this all informs the probability of pulling something off, but it all comes down to the dice roll. There's always a chance that you can pull something off. So you roll the dice and you're successful, great, you steal the book. You fail, then you get caught, and they said you're never going to get the strategy guide for Donkey Konga, and that's it. Like, you're going to have to.
You got it there. How was he going to get it into Disco Elysium? And he did it seamlessly. Amazing. Yeah, no, that's pretty eloquently laid out there, Steve. Thank you. And yeah, those dice rolls are, I think talking about it, it seems very like almost like a boring, why is this a video game sort of mechanic, but it's quite well done, I have to say. Like you were saying, all those variables that tie into it really incentivize you to explore a lot of options before you do any dice rolls. And I always loved getting an interesting dice roll because I knew, even if the odds were low, there was still a chance. And I presume all of us in our playthroughs got like something that had low odds, and we were like, "Fuck yes!" You know, like I pulled it off. But also, if you do fail a dice roll, it can sometimes lead to interesting, like divergences, and can send you down a different path. And it's always entertaining and funny, but at the same time, you sort of have to turn off the gamer part of your brain in a way, and sort of accept that winning. Getting the green tick isn't always necessarily the way to progress in the game.
You can redo some of them as well, can't you?
Yeah, that's a great thing. Like when you level up, I guess, or when you do something that boosts certain stats that you have, like wearing certain clothes, it'll give you the option. And I don't know if on the version you played, it sort of tells you on the map where these are, and you can sort of see, I have a dice roll over here that I failed, but I can try it again because I'm wearing these shoes or whatever.
Yeah, that's another thing. Like the clothes you're wearing can affect your stats too. Yeah. So depending on like how you're playing, like your character could look completely different. Like I don't know about for you guys, but I had like some guy wearing like a fishnet vest thing while also wearing steel like battle armor gauntlets like towards the end. Like it's insane. Actually, sure, while on the topic of dice rolls, do you want to give us another quote by any chance?
That's a wow. This guy's segue is better than the inventor of the Segway. The inventor of the Segway died by segwaying off a cliff, by the way.
Really?
That's true. Dice roll time. We rolled an 8, and number 8 is, the fuck does Kuno know what a rake is? Kuno's not a gardener. And that was from Kuno.
I feel that's a good segue into like how well written some of the characters are.
Yeah. That's sort of what you're here for in a way. And you're going to have to hold me back from talking too much flowery language over this game, because I think it has like top tier writing. It's sort of it puts other games to shame to a certain extent. Not every game is built differently, and I think that's the beauty of video games, in that they can have horrible writing or like barely any story and can be excellent game. I recently played through Final Fantasy IV, and like, guys, that's shit. The writing is just so bad. It has so many hurdles to get over, like bad translation and, the storytelling acumen at the time, but it's still a great game. But this, it's amazing. I think my favorite thing is the way each character has their own voice. Now, I don't mean like literally the voice performances, although those are great, but each character feels like they aren't written by the same person, that they have their own tics and their own ways of communicating and speaking. Like, there's a bit where you meet Everett, the union boss, and
he's brilliant.
He's fantastic. He's really well written and just slimy and sort of like a subversive sort of griminess to him, but on the surface saying very, saying things that you can only get behind, but he manages to say them in such a twisted way that you get a lot of his character just from the way he forms a sentence sometimes.
Yeah, like he has one of my favorite lines in the entire game, and this is a little not PC. You can bleep this out if it turns out not to be. You guys can decide.
Okay.
But there's a bit where he's asking you about your values and like what kind of person you are, and you're given like a bunch of options, and I chose like, oh, I'm an ultra liberalist man, and the guy looks at you and says, you're not an ultra liberalist, Harry. Don't be a
yeah, I'm definitely bleeping that out. But they didn't bleep it out, I guess. So whatever.
But I mean, and that's interesting enough as well. Like, just this doesn't really hold back in terms of some of the stuff it's talking about. Like, it really delves into dark stuff. I mean, actually, no, there was something I was going to say there, but we'll leave that to the spoiler section of the.
But just on that point you said, Steve, it's so refreshing to come across a game that isn't afraid to be political. And I'm not saying this is, I hate to use these terms, but like an ultra woke sort of preachy thing either. I didn't get that from it.
It's pretty over the top though. Do you know, like it takes, I guess, stuff like ideas from the political sphere, but then like goes like, really far with it, like almost like comically, so that like, well, that's ridiculous, Yeah,
but just as a way of displaying like certain ideologies within this game world, I guess. That's their way of doing it. But like all of it has a grounding in real life. Like we're aware of like union disputes and the sort of corruption that can come into that, and the way the regular people are used as pawns and get caught in the middle when bigger people are playing their fucking ideological chess game, let's say. But for me, it was just refreshing that a game tackles these so head on and with such humor, when a lot of game makers are bending over backwards to say their games aren't political for fear of like alienating some gamers out there who don't believe with it or something. Like the classic example is Ubisoft constantly saying that Far Cry 5 isn't political, even though it's about like a religious insurrection in middle America. It's just nice to see, because like that is political, Ubisoft. Like it's allowed to be, but it doesn't. It shouldn't detract someone from playing the game. All games are political in some way or another, even if they don't address things as directly as Disco Elysium does.
Yeah.
Well, actually, that brings me to an interesting point that I wanted to ask you guys about. How do you feel about the fact that this takes place in an alternative world as opposed to our own?
I mean, I don't know. I guess I'm a bit indifferent about it, because like I was saying before, I felt like all the ideology stuff was like so far flung anyway. Like I kind of like, I know it kind of made like sense to me then for it to be like that, No, I didn't really think twice about that, to be honest.
I think it gives them a good platform to talk about things that are pretty close to the bone sometimes.
Yeah.
They explore some like uncomfortable territory. Like their opinions of communism are, mixed. It's not like, oh, let's raise this flag and say this is the way to do it. It's about a failed communist government in a way. So I think grounding it in a fictional world allows them more freedom, but also takes the sting out of some of those areas they go into. And and it's fantastic. It works really well with the fish out of water amnesia thing we were talking about as well. Like, I think if someone woke up in our world, it'll be a lot more annoying to hear someone ask, so what's the United States of America? And then someone has to explain, oh, it was a British colony, but before that there was native people, and before that there, like, you know, that sort of thing. So I really enjoyed at the end of the game, I wanted to explore more. They mention other areas in this world that you don't go to. And I really wanted to go to like Jamrock and places like that they like briefly mention.
Yeah, that's actually kind of surprising because like I realized that quite early on how small the map this game is. Like, it's weird that like it's some ways it's a small game until you take into account how much dialogue options there are. Then it feels absolutely gargantuan. Yeah. But like it does leave a lot open. It leaves you wanting more. One thing I do want to ask you is though, right? Because it's no secret that I really, really like this game. I thought it was fantastic, but I don't think it's completely without flaws. And the biggest flaw that I thought was there, and I want to get your guys' opinion on it, was sometimes I just did not want to read the sheer amount of text that was on screen because there was a lot of it.
Sean threw his hands up in the air. Hallelujah.
No, 100% agree. And something I actually wanted to jump back to when you were talking about categorizing the game is I have seen it called a text-based RPG, which I think is probably like tech, and I guess a point and click, so it's kind of like a mix between the two. And like, okay, just to like go on a tangent for a little bit, I really wanted to like this game, so I'm on the. I do still think it's a really good game. I just think, and I like, if I could give it the time, I think I'd get into it. But I found it really hard to get in. Like, I imagined that, you know, there would be like a hump I would get over, and then I'd be really into it. But getting there is like a really slow, drawn out thing, and I think, and that's what kind of like stopped me, I think. But
I don't think that's an unfounded criticism, because if you have to put in that sort of investment to a game, does that reflect badly on the design in some ways?
No, I just think this game isn't for everyone, to be honest. You know, I still agree that I think it's a really good game in what it does. The storytelling, the graphics are like beautiful. Yeah. The characters, like, it's got so much going for it. But yeah, just to go back to your point, Steve, the sheer amount of like dialogue, because I'd walk up to a character and be like, oh, this is going to be a quick conversation. Forget it. They just keep giving you options, and it's like, okay, like, cool, I get that it's world building and like character developing and all that, but like it would just go on for like I found myself just like, and the dialogue, like, that's another thing. So in the Final Cut version, which I think is the one we all played, maybe, they added actual dialogue,
voice acting.
I can't imagine what it would have been like without that, to be honest.
The original version did have some voice acting, but only for certain characters.
Right, okay. The voice acting is so good in it, and like I loved listening to the guy narrating it and everything.
He's amazing.
He's so good, like, brilliant voice. But yeah, like you were saying, Steve, there's so much text that I just found myself skipping it. And like sometimes not even reading the whole thing, or like just skimming it. And like that's like the main thing you're there for. So when it got to that point where I was skipping that stuff, I was like, yeah, I mean, I can't stick with this for that long if I'm going to be skipping the main part of the game, basically.
Yeah.
You know?
No, that's that's like, you know, skipping levels in a fucking...
It's annoying. It's like you have to approach this like you're reading a book. That's it. You know, it's not like playing a game. Well, you know, it is, but it's not, if you get me.
That's the same point I was going to make, because see, the problem is with this game is that it challenges you, and that's well and good if that's what you're here for. And so unlike yourself, Sean, it wasn't a case for me where I had felt like I had to build up to it until I liked it. It was dependent on my mood. If I was up for it, up for reading it, I was like, oh yeah, this is great, this is the best game ever. But if I was like, for example, hungover and just wanted to unwind, this is the last game in the world I would want to play. Because like, there's some dialogue parts, no matter what you do, is great. I loved every single time I talked to Kuno, because his dialogue was hilarious. But then you get to like I don't know if you guys found it, but there was like, at one point you meet a random dice maker. I don't know if you met that person. Yeah. But she has like these really like deep philosophical concepts that she goes over, and for bits of it, like if you're not really paying attention, you're kind of like, what does this have to do with the main story at all? So it feels inconsequential, and unless you're in that mode where you're happy to appreciate the themes and all that kind of thing, you're just kind of like, this is kind of pointless. So it's boring and pointless. You're in that space, and I think, sorry, just one last thing to say, like, I think a lot of critics would be very afraid to make that criticism for fear of seeming like they're, oh, well, you just didn't get it, or you're an idiot, or you don't want to you don't want to sound stupid when you're saying it. But and again, this isn't necessarily a flaw per se, but like you said, Sean, it might just not be for everybody. It might not be what you want from a video game, and if that's the case, that's okay. But
no, I fully agree with your point, Stephen. I think because when I started playing it, I was reading through everything. I was loving the world and everything. I think it was just more so I got burnt out after a while of playing it, and I was just like wanting to progress. So I was like, oh, I'm not reading all this. Skip it. And I think what you said about the mood, being in the mood for it, is like really important, because there would be times where I'm like, oh, it's cool. Like I've got loads of time on my hands. I'm not in a rush. I don't want to play like, or I'm not in the mood for something like a shooter or something. Like I'll just kick back and play this for an hour. But I think, this is something I've talked about before, is that like I really need to kind of feel like I'm progressing through something. And when you're just sat talking to the same character for like 10 minutes reading text, it burns me out a bit. And so maybe like, just being in the right mood for it is a good way of putting it. That I need to just come back to it now and again. But actually that brings me on to another point. It's a really difficult game to just jump back into if you haven't played it in a while, because I did that a while ago, and like straight away I couldn't even remember like the controls and stuff. Like, and it's not even a control heavy game, but it's like,
it's not like fucking Bayonetta or some shit.
No, but they had like, do you know, like the green dots are like things you can interact with and stuff. I was like, so I hadn't played it in months, I'd say, and I jumped back in, and I was like going over to him, I was like, how do I interact with this? It's not giving me any indication of how to interact. Like I just couldn't remember that, and it took me like 5 minutes to figure it out.
But sorry,
go ahead.
Just on that point you're making, I have to say I do agree. I love this game to bits. It's probably one of my favorite games we've actually covered so far. But I did reach a similar point at one point in the game. So it's a little later in the game, and I won't get too in specifics because we're not past the spoiler watershed yet, but you get to interact with some communists and potentially join their fucking communist book club or whatever. And I had that option open in front of me, and I was just like, you know what? I just don't want to hear a load about communism and about books and shit like that. I just wasn't in the space for that at that time. So I decided, no, I won't. It's sort of a side track sort of thing anyway. Like I'm sure it loops back to the main plot in some respect, but I was just sort of burnt out at that point.
Well, that's actually something. So because I just didn't finish the game, I have kind of gone ahead and watched like reviews and stuff just to kind of like, so I would know more about it for the podcast. And I didn't realize how much like side stuff there is to do in it.
Yeah, there's
a lot. I thought like, okay, the whole thing. Well, without getting spoilers, like I thought like everything you're doing is leading up to like the investigation, but there's plenty of stuff you can do on the side and like throughout the whole game, and that's pretty cool. And the fact that everybody can have kind of a different journey through it and like do some stuff, not do other stuff. Like it is cool. There's a lot of choice in the game, I guess, which is cool.
I think this might be a good point to say we're going to talk about spoilers from now on, because I think we've covered the generalities well enough. But just to mark the sea change, I'm going to do another dice roll. So I wonder if we can pick up the dice audio on this mic.
I can hear it anyway.
There we go. That's good.
We need like a hardwood thing to drop it on.
I should have brought my ladle. My ladle? Why is that the word?
Ladle.
So I rolled a 10, and the quote is, "Officer in need of assistance, ... on the dance floor." And that's from Harry as well. Yeah, let's get into some spoilers. Let's get into the plot a bit more.
Can we just, before we get really, really into it, like this just feels like a nice natural point to talk about some of our favorite bits. Like, do you guys want to talk about some things that like maybe you didn't get to do that you think most people did, or things that you were successful in doing that like you didn't get to do? Like Sean, for example, I think, can we start with you just because like you were on day one? Is there anything that you did that you felt like was, oh, I bet not many people saw that, or something like that?
I wouldn't say really that there's anything I've done that was like that other people haven't done, because I haven't like there's plenty of places I haven't been yet and stuff, I'd say. I think like I'm just trying to think up to the point where I finish, or the last bit I played. I think I've gone over to those guys and who were playing bowls, and like I threw the one into the sea.
Yeah,
that was pretty funny.
I did that as well.
Yeah, and I went to the bookshop where like you meet the girl outside, and then you go in and you can give out to the mothers, like she's out there freezing, should be in school and stuff. No, I mean, I don't think I've done anything in particular that other people wouldn't have done yet, just because I'm not that far into it. But I I did enjoy like exploring the area and like meeting all these people, even if they're not related to the main plot, and just figuring out their stories and stuff. I thought it was pretty cool.
The one, I'll tell you mine in a second, Steve, but I think that's one of the best parts of the game, in that all these characters are really well written, really well performed, but all their stories sort of inform the teams. And when you do eventually find the killer, talking to all these people and knowing more about the world informs him a lot more as well.
Yeah.
You understand why he did it. So mine is at the end. So this is complete spoiler anyway. The killer, and this can be frustrating for some people, but the killer isn't a character you interact with until the very end of the game.
Yeah.
So you go to an island which is inaccessible for most of the game, and it's a really cool moment where you're on a boat and you're playing some music, and you go out and the camera pulls out and you see the island, and it's a cool moment, and you go there and you meet the deserter, I think is his name in the game.
I think his name is Yosef in it.
Yosef, yeah. Before that, you have a confrontation with the militia who you've been chasing throughout most of the game, and some of the Union guys. What are they called? The Hardy Boys or something like that?
The Hardy Boys, yeah.
Yeah. I was thinking, did I steal that?
The Secret Seven.
Yeah.
Secret Seven and Famous Five attacking in the middle of the street.
But so that's a confrontation with guns and has a load of dice rolls. During that, because of my decisions, my stats or my dice rolls, Kim got shot. And I was like,
shit.
Fucking Kim, like he's everyone's favourite character. I love Kim so much. I didn't want him to get shot. He didn't die. The game makes it very clear he didn't die, but he was out of action. So instead of having Kim as my partner when I went to do the final confrontation, I had Kuno as my partner, which was a complete fucking left field choice, but was brilliant because you've Kuno cursing and fucking and just being himself alongside you as like an honorary detective in a way.
That's so weird. I love it.
Is it down to a dice roll that Kim gets shot?
There's multiple variables, like everything in the game, about whether, but like, there's several dice rolls within that confrontation at the end.
I think basically. The last one is like you can see someone pulling a gun behind him and you have to warn him, and that's a dice roll. So like there is one quite like important one at that point. That's really cool, man.
Yeah, I heard about that like from doing research and stuff, but that doesn't always happen, or it doesn't happen for everyone, I think. Is that right?
What, that Kuno is your partner? Or?
Yeah, I think it only happens if Kim gets out of action.
It's probably the rare version of that.
Is that what you were talking about earlier when you said you did something that you don't think other people did?
Yeah, that's one of the... Well, I'm sure a lot of people did it, but like it seems most people seem to have brought Kim with them. Right. I think a lot of people probably save scummed because they didn't want Kim to get shot, so they went back to an older save or something like that. Maybe, I'm just presuming there. What about you, Steve? Is there a moment that stuck out for you like that?
There's two of them that kind of are sort of related. One of them was I eventually got to sing the karaoke song. Did you get that?
I got that as well, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Did you sing it well, or did you sing it badly?
I think I sung it well, actually.
Oh, okay. Same here. Yeah. I really like that because it's really funny. Everyone who hates you still insists that you sang really badly. But Kim at like towards the end is like I think when he's summing up, well, okay, you didn't have this bit, but in my ending, like he's kind of summing up your performance as a police officer, and he'll focus on loads of your flaws before eventually saying like, but he's actually a really good police officer and a hell of a singer too. Like it's really good. But yeah, as well as that, I also, do you know the lady whose boat you borrow to go out to the island? I went on a date with her at one stage.
Wait, oh wow. Oh, I didn't even know that was an option. Where did you go?
So, do you know the lighthouse at the very north part of the map?
Yes, yeah.
So we went there, and I love this because it is the most mature depiction of a date I think I've ever seen in my entire life. So nothing happens on this date, right? Basically, you just say, would you like to come for a walk with me? And it's like, well, I don't like, she makes a big thing about how she doesn't really trust people because she had an abusive previous relationship, and like he died, and she's like, I'm not ready to trust people yet. And she's aware that you're a drunkard and a drug user. So she's like, okay, what the hell, I'll do it. And no matter how well you do on the date, like the best thing that can happen is like she'll come out of it like kind of hopeful that like, hey, maybe someday something can happen here. But that's like the best outcome. But it felt so good to have that happen. Like it was really amazing. Oh, other side note, I got her sword for doing the date as well. So here, take this, by the way, and you just have a sword for the rest of the game.
Is that like something you hold in one of your hands then? You just have a sword?
Yeah. And it gives you like a boost in confidence or something like that. I don't think you can use it for anything. It's just like, yeah, here's a cool sword. But it's a really mature thing, like, because you have plenty of options to kind of like try your luck with her. I never did it. I tried to do like, I looked this up afterwards, like what happens if you do this, and apparently being really reserved and just like typically friendly was the right way to go. And yeah, it's because like no matter what you do, you can't actually hook up. And it's like, I love that. I thought that was amazing.
Yeah, it's nice that it doesn't take the usual approach or the predictable approach with some of them things. And it's weird because like if you take a step back in this game and like look at it, it's like full of cliches in some ways. Like the whole detective story, the drunk detective with like a heartbreaking past, and even the amnesiac thing, like you were saying, is like a common thing in fiction for world building and stuff like that. But it doesn't, it never lets any of them, none of those cliches bring it down, I should say.
Yeah.
I think it elevates all that stuff.
There's a couple of things that I didn't get to do that I'd be curious to see, like yourself, Mike, if you were able to do. Did you ever get to go into the church? Because I never got to go in there.
Yeah, I went into the church. The church is where that line, what was it? Officer in need of assistance on the dance floor. Because do you know there's like those techno guys in the tent outside?
Yeah, so I arrested them straight away when I met them. Yeah, like I just arrested them, and like that was the end of the storyline, and I couldn't get into the church after that.
It's pretty, yeah, the church has got some cool stuff in it. You go in and obviously there's this huge religious figure in it, and that's a whole side thing as well, but you can help those techno heads turn the church into a nightclub, and then you can go in and you can dance with Kim in there.
Amazing.
But yeah, it's so weird that because that's like a good few hours of my playthrough there that you didn't do, but then you probably did the date, and I never did that and didn't know it even existed, to be honest.
I feel like one of the biggest things that I focused on was the cryptids. Did you do that bit?
I did it for a while, and then I sort of was like, I don't know nothing seems to be happening here, and I think, do you know the way there's several things in the game that are sort of like day dependent. So, come back here at night tomorrow and check this thing. And I think I forgot to do one of those. Like I laid the traps, but then I forgot to look at them again or something.
Right. I did. I don't know if this is how your game ended, but in my playthrough, after you catch the murderer, a giant cryptid appears out of nowhere and has a psychic conversation with you.
No, that happened on mine as well. I think I'd done enough to get that part of it, maybe, yeah.
That was like, I thought that was like individual. I'm not sure if that happens in every playthrough, but one of my favorite things about it is I was able to take a picture of it using the camera, and because of, if I hadn't taken that picture at the end, I got the impression I would have got a really bad ending. But because I have proof of this like rare animal, they're like, well, okay, I guess this excuses a lot of your past discretion. So like, yeah, good job. And I definitely got like a really fulfilling ending after that. I was like, oh, nice, cool, I did well.
No, it's because I had Kuno with me, so he didn't have a fucking camera. So we were sort of like, they were just like, oh, I don't believe you and this child, like whatever. But still, they were like, oh, you did this thing good, so that's fine. But yeah, that's pretty cool that like we can all get different experiences out of it. And I guess technically that makes it very replayable, but I think the density of the text maybe makes me a little less willing to jump in and instantly replay it, to be honest.
Yeah.
Maybe a while down the line, like if they announce a sequel, maybe in a few years I'll have a go at playing through again. But at the moment, I just sort of like, it's still sort of too fresh in my brain to jump back in.
I think it's still, it always comes down for me for like just the mood you're in. It's like what you were saying, Sean, is really apt. Like it's just like a really well written book. Like obviously if you're in the mood for it, great. Like, but you know yourselves, you're not always in the mood to sit down and read a book. Sometimes you want to just not think and do something really mindless. Like when you've been working all day, like you just want to like relax rather than like be challenged. But if you're in the mood for that, amazing. And that's why like I really respect this game. Like this is particularly memorable, even if it's not like always going to be a game that I can sink into. Like, so I really respect it for that.
Do you think it works as a game then, if we're thinking about it? Because like it is an RPG, it has stats, it has, you know, it does have failed states. You can die in this game, and I'm not sure if you've came across any of the funnier ways to die. Generally, most of them are funny. Like one of them is when you first wake up hungover, and if you turn on the light too quickly, you'll just have a heart attack and die because you're so hungover. And there's another one when you meet Everett. He, as a power move, asks you to sit down in a really uncomfortable chair, and if your physicality isn't good enough, you die because the chair's so uncomfortable.
I died once, but I can't remember how I died. I think it was when I was trying to assert my authority to the leader of the Hardy Boys. And
did you put the gun in your mouth?
No, I can't remember what I did. I just remember like somehow at the end of it I died. Oh, actually that's another thing. So I don't know if you came across this, but I remember talking to someone early on who explained to me that Everett is actually two people. Like he has a twin brother. Did you ever meet his twin brother?
No. Did you?
Yeah. No, I'm wondering, like, is that an option that you can do?
It might. I always took that as the twin brother doesn't exist, and it's Everett like playing another game with people, as in like using the twin brother as a fall guy for things, maybe. But one thing I didn't do is get into the shipping container.
Yeah, same. I never got into it either.
I looked it up, and apparently when you go in, it's like all twisted and distorted, and there's a guy in there that's so rich that light distorts around him. And that's one thing I wanted to raise, is that that's actually based on one of the guys who financed the game. So a lot of the finance for the game came from one person who was just like a fan of what they were doing and wanted to help them. So they wrote this character into the game who's like a rich guy who's just really friendly, but is so rich that like he distorts everything around him. And I think that's one thing that elevates the game, is that they put so much of themselves in, without it being like too directly autobiographical, like some other games that like more directly reference the creator's life. But they put in things like their anxieties around the game. So if you go into that same building where the bookshop is, in the basement there's the old studio of a game company, and they talk about this really ambitious game they are making, but it all goes to shit. And that's based on these guys being in the middle of making this very ambitious game, but like not wondering if it's going to go anywhere or if anything will come of it.
That's cool.
Those sort of personal touches really elevated for me, because you can tell they're coming from somewhere real.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I just, there's so many options here that, like, even though we've talked about this now, and I feel like I've gotten a general feel for the entire shape of the game, so you can see where the paths kind of diverge, but there's still so many little bits that you can potentially find, and like they might not be incredibly relevant to the main plot, but just the fact that they're there, it's kind of like a water cooler kind of game that you can just gather around and talk about. Oh, I got to do this. Like one thing that I got to do, and I think you didn't because what you were saying at the start, is I found out the reason our main character Harry is an amnesiac is he gives himself like a self-inflicted amnesia with a bender because his fiance left him years ago, and it's just been like building and building upon his brain. Eventually he just cracked. But in my playthrough, at one point I find a payphone and there's a dice roll that just says type in a random number using muscle memory. And I was like, okay. So I did it and it was really low, but I still managed to get it. And somehow I managed to call the ex-fiance.
Oh, cool.
And it's a really like, I'm not going to spoil it. Even though I said no spoilers, I'm not going to spoil it here. But like, you have a really in-depth personal conversation with her that is just really, really well done.
Yeah.
Wow.
They're not afraid to hit some raw points. Like, the stuff around substance abuse and grief, like grief for a relationship or actual grief for in other ways, is something that's explored pretty maturely, I would say, throughout the game. But also, it's never too far from a joke as well, which is amazing.
Yeah. And like they talk about rape in this game, which is insane. Like there's very few games. Yeah, and like it's done in not a bombastically dramatic way. It's just kind of like, yeah, this is something that happened allegedly. It is later revealed that like the sex was consensual, so it's fine. But like still, it's for a second there, it's like whoa.
Yeah, that's pretty, and like the whole idea of vigilante justice in those sorts of cases, and it makes you really interrogate that in your mind about the justification for anything like that as well. Yeah, heavy stuff. I think it's time for a dice roll.
I think it is.
Go for it.
Okay, let me do this one. I got a 7. I already did 7, so we might be here for a while, guys. Sorry. What's that? That's 9. Okay, 9 is... Okay, so the case probably isn't mysterious, but it could be sexy. And that's from Harry as well. All the best lines are Harry.
I do think what you're saying about humor is pretty important, actually. That like the fact that there's so much dialogue in this is definitely alleviated by the fact that jokes are pretty common. Like almost every single conversation you have will have a pretty decent humdinger in the middle of it, you know. So that's great.
And it extends to the characters as well, because there's no one-note character who's just like the comedic relief or anything like that, or just a bad guy. Like we were in our Red Dead podcast, we talked about Micah and how he's sort of like a one-note character within that story, and there isn't a lot of depth to him. But like Kuno is fantastic. He's someone who's so annoying at first, but then you sort of you learn a bit more about him. And I'm not sure if you guys went to his apartment and you see his dad, and it paints a bit more of a picture of Kuno. It's not I don't feel like it ever paints over him and says, oh, it justifies the way he is, but it sort of illuminates it a bit more, which I didn't expect it to do. Like when I met Kuno, I thought, this is what this character is. He's just going to swear at me and be horrible, and then I get to punch him, and that feels good. So that's one of my favorite dice rolls in the game, I have to say, is punching Kuno.
I think I went for that like the first time I was talking to him or something and missed, and then you were like, and then... Yeah, he's just like, he loses more respect for you, and then you have to build up. Actually, that one thing that I thought we could talk about is like the skills and stuff in it, and the skill points and all that. Obviously, because I'm still pretty early in the game, I haven't delved too much into that stuff. Like I haven't really added much from when I started out, because at the start of the game they give you kind of little starter options, don't they? To like for whichever way you want to play the game.
And it's sort of unique that they're not like the usual things like, you know, aiming ability or things like that. They're like these weird things like drama and hand-eye coordination and different unusual traits that you're like...
Yeah, they have Inland Empire, which reads as like the intensity of the soul. It's like, what the fuck does that mean?
That's a funny one, because that gives you lots of interesting... Apparently, if you put points into that, when you first see the body, the body hanging from the tree, it'll tell you who the killer is, but in a really abstract way, so you don't understand
That's
what
mad.
it means. But if you go back and listen to it, you're like, oh wait, it sort of told me who it was.
That's weird. That's amazing.
But yeah, like I'm just curious as to how you guys like built your characters at the beginning, and then like how you added skills as you went through the game.
I went with more of an intelligence sort of build. I can't remember which specific personality traits I went with, but went with more of an intelligence build, but then added a lot more points to physique and those sort of things as I went on, because there was lots of skill checks that relied on physique that I wanted to do.
Are you able to max out, or is it limited to a certain amount of points?
Each thing is limited.
Okay,
to a
so
certain
you'll
extent.
never get everything. Like,
Yeah,
unlocked.
and you can't max out everything. It's pretty like sparing with what it'll give you. It gives you lots of options in that you can wear certain clothes, and I'm not sure if you guys ever took drugs so you could pass a skill
The
check.
odd time, yeah.
Yeah, I think so as well. There's one. I think there's a part early on where. Oh no, sorry, that wasn't drugs. That was you needed something to take the body down, or to like inspect the body. You needed to get something to get rid of the smell, or to like hide the smell. Yeah.
There was one point where you have to make a jump that isn't even a big jump, but you have to make a jump, and so I took a load of speed or something before I did it, and then you're sort of like, you turn to Kim and say, "Hey Kim, did you see I did the jump?" And he's like, "Yeah, okay." Like, well done.
Yeah, I had kind of the polar opposite build as you, Michael. I went for more physical, but I also kind of built up my intelligence and stuff like that. So it was kind of more even grounded by the end of it. But yeah, no, it's interesting how some of that stuff does kind of feed into it. Like one thing, because of the physicality that I put so much into that at the start, do you know the really massive guy who's like standing on top of the gate?
Yeah,
and you have an
Measurehead.
option to punch. Yes, Measurehead. So I was able to punch him and then do a roundhouse kick to knock him out, which I was like, amazing. I'm not sure if you could do that in like every other build.
I failed one of them, and he basically like grabs your fist or something, and I don't think I died, but I took a big hit, and I was like, he just mocks you a lot more then.
And like, I'm wondering, did the points that you put into your stats affect like what happens at the end? Because when I was playing, right, I obviously I put a lot into physicality, and also another weird thing is I ran a lot of places like when I was going, and once Kim comments on it, it's like, what's with all the running? Like, you know, why don't you take it easy? And at the end of the game, they tell you like before you became a police officer, you were a gym teacher, and that explains why you were so fit and why you run everywhere. And it's like, that's amazing. Like,
I do think that must happen to everyone, because who would walk around the game is the only thing.
Yeah.
So it must be, but maybe someone should try a speed run where they walk everywhere and see how quickly they can do it, I guess.
Kim, how good a character though is Kim? Just I have to gush on him a little bit more.
Kim is amazing. I can't believe they wrote a character who's just so patient with you, and that's so endearing. And the odd time when like his veneer cracks, and like, I can't remember the scene, but there's some scene where you're talking to someone and you go on one of your crazy tangents, and one of the lines is you look across at Kim and like you can see a bare smile cracking at the side of his mouth when like he knows he should be serious, but like he's just entertained at whatever tomfoolery you're getting up to. The relationship with Kim is amazing. Yeah, I thought that was really well done.
I love that he's like, when you first meet him, like all you really get from him is like, he's a really uptight guy who like does things by the book, and like for a lot of games that would be fine, leave it at that, that's your character, great. But he is so nuanced. Like there's so many little things to his character that like tell you aspects of his life. Like I love just a couple of random things that I found out about him in my playthrough. Like you might have found this out as well. Found out he's really obsessed with cars.
Yeah.
So like
he calls
likes
himself
drag race.
A torque dork is what he calls himself.
Yeah. I love like the fact that he has one cigarette at the end of every single like shift, which is kind of indicative of like, yeah, he does things by the book, but like he has a personality. He likes to relax as well. Also, at one point found out he was gay, which isn't dwelt upon. Really interesting.
Did I find that out as well? I can't remember. I think I knew that, but I'm not sure if I knew it from the game or just the fandom really like gushing over that.
Oh, okay. And there was one other thing. There's a bit like where you speak to like a racist, and it's like one of the few times that he kind of gets a bit pissed off, and he's like given out to him and saying like, you're calling me this because of this, but he doesn't break, like he doesn't like start acting unprofessionally. He's just like expressing his opinion in a way that doesn't like affect his work, which again I just thought is brilliant, because a big part of his personality is how much he does things by the book, but he's not defined by that, but it is like such a big part of him that like he's not going to break character for the sake of a dramatic moment. And
I think it's such a he's a really well written, rounded character, but mechanically he's so important to have alongside you during a lot of these conversations, to be like, you know, to point things back towards the investigation, or to, you know, like get things back on track. Kim's an amazing character. I don't know what they're going to do next. I feel like I've enough faith in the developers to not have to reuse any of the characters, but seeing Kim again would be cool, I have to say. If there's anyone I'd like to bring on, it would be Kim, I think. So let's do another dice roll, and then we might get into the central question of the podcast. Does Disco Elysium deserve its place on the list? So let's roll it up. And we have got 5. The man does not know the bullet has entered his brain. He never will. Death comes faster than the realization. And that's a great quote. Visual calculus. So yeah, throw it out to you guys. This is number 11 in all-time games. So do you think Disco Elysium deserves a place? And it's the most recent game we'll be covering for a long time.
I'm just going to jump in, and I feel like I can't really give a good, like, I don't think I can give really an opinion on this, just because I have some conflicts with being able to enjoy the game. But I do think it's a really well-made game, and it's got so much going for it. I can see why it's this high. A little bit surprised though that a game like this is that high, just because I feel like it's not for everyone. You would think that the top of the list would be full of like all-rounder games and stuff, but maybe that just maybe stands to like how good it is as like in the genre it's in. I
think Steve hit on something earlier that this is a game I feel like critics might like a bit more than the average player. Now, maybe I'm being a bit dismissive of the average gamer. We're not all fucking like just playing COD, you know, so like that might be, you know, me being a bit dismissive.
It has got a higher critic score than it does user score. So maybe that's a fair point. But so it's hard for me to really judge it on its placement. I'm just going to leave it at that, to be honest. I can't really say whether, like, truthfully, whether I think it deserves to be there or not. Like a really good game that I didn't enjoy.
There you have it, folks.
Nice.
Over to you, Steve.
In my opinion, it should be higher. I think it's an insanely good game. Like all the things that I said about before in terms of like waves of text coming at you still stand. I do think there's points where you'll be playing this game and you're just not going to be in the mood to like read the communist fucking manifesto when you're just like trying to play the game. But having said that, the things this game does, the things it achieves, and like just for how memorable it is, like this is a game that even if you're not always in the mood for playing it, it's one that I'd say I'll probably be talking about for years and years, because holy shit, it's just like such a unique, incredible game. So I think it should be higher than it is. Kick off them Grand Theft Auto games there and replace that. I'd be more than happy. Yeah, this game is exceptional, and I'd recommend anyone who's listening, if they haven't played it and they'd like to be, first of all, challenged. Also, if you've ever been interested in playing Dungeons and Dragons but you're not into fantasy, this is a pretty good kind of like segue into that, like, because it's kind of got that vibe to it a little bit, like that weird gamey tabletop thing. But also, if you don't want to learn a million years of lore about dragons and all that shit, you know,
you learn them about communists instead.
Replace dragons with communists, and there you go. How about you, Michael?
I probably fall closer to you, Steve, all right, because I really enjoyed this game. I do have to temper my effusive praise of it with the fact that there may be some recency bias with me in that this came out pretty recently and I haven't played anything like it, where there's other games that like innovated mechanically and did like laid the groundwork for this game to exist. which may be lower down on the list. But if you just take it in a vacuum, I think it's an amazing package. It just raises the bar for game writing. I do feel like this. We've talked about games having merit because of the influence they had. So that's one thing we said. Ocarina, top of the tree because it sort of changed the way games are made in a way. I'm not sure it's going to be the same. I'm not sure we're going to have a load of disco likes coming out the same way we did like Ocarina or Doom or Dark Souls or anything like that. But I do feel like it tapped into something that there isn't a lot of, and that we will see some stuff reflected in games. It may be in some more subtle ways, as in maybe characters will be a bit more rounded and less one-dimensional than they currently are in some games. Or maybe it'll be in the fact that it does player choice so well. So one thing is, I think, as far as I know, the ending is pretty much the same in terms of you finding the killer for the case. There's only one killer for the case. That never changes. But as we've illuminated in this podcast, your experience getting there can be so different because of some divergent choices. And maybe because you've one more point in Inland Empire, that you get a conversation check that you can do within a talk with someone, and that just opens up a complete new path. I think that's something that I'd like to see explored a bit more in games, rather than, like, I love The Walking Dead, but that was so artificial the way they presented player choice. Like, it really didn't matter a lot of the time. And I feel like Disco Elysium does that a lot more. Does it a lot better, I should say. So for me, it definitely does deserve its place on the list. And I'm so glad we get something this unique this far up, because, like you're saying, Steve, we've a lot of versions of Grand Theft Auto 5 in this list.
And this is of all the games we've played so far on the list, this is probably the least well known. Like, I'd say obviously it made a big splash when it came out, but despite that, I'd say there's quite a lot of people who have never heard of Disco Elysium even still. And I definitely recommend, for people who want to, expand their horizons a little bit, try something a bit different, play this game. It has the best characters I think I've ever seen, such well written characters. So you will be even if you don't like it, Sean, you liked it, but it wasn't your cup of tea, you'd probably still be talking about it, yeah. So
yeah, definitely. Like I said before, it's a game that I really want to like. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think I'm definitely not going to leave it there. And I know I say that about a lot of games, but it is but it is a game. And I at times because I should mention I played the Switch version, which I think works great for this type of game, because there's been times where I've just got into bed and played an hour of it, before going to sleep. And it works really well like that, because, I'm relaxed, I'm about to go to sleep. So I'm not looking for something that's really Twitch heavy and stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it's something that I'll dip in and out of, but it is a difficult game to dip in and out of, is the only thing. Yeah. So we'll see how it goes. But it's a game I think that I'll definitely come around to. And like I said, I'm not saying it's a bad game or anything. It was just a bit hard for me to get into, Can
I just sort of sum up my thoughts on the game with one little anecdote, if you'll indulge me?
Go for it.
I played this on the PS4 when it came out, and I'm not sure if you was aware, but this was quite buggy when it came out on PS4 initially. And I played through the first 3 or 4 hours of the game, and the game crashed and deleted my save file.
Ooh.
And I had done some important skill checks and done a lot of groundwork in those 3 or 4 hours, and that was completely lost, and I had to start the game from zero. But I did that because I really wanted to see what was happening, and I wanted to meet more characters. And if that isn't a mark of quality, I don't know what is, because I'm a guy who, I stopped playing the game Control because the pause menu was lagging too much for me and it annoyed me. So it doesn't take a lot for me to stop playing a game. So it takes a lot for me to jump over that hurdle and keep playing it.
Yeah,
so
fair play.
That'll be, if that isn't a mark of quality, I don't know what is. So I might just do one final dice roll, and then I'm going to throw it to Steve, who will tell us what will be on the next episode.
Go for it.
Dicey. And we have rolled a 7, which I've already got.
We'll have to put in a dice sound effect over that because I want to hear the landing, but I'm not getting that.
We like a really obvious over-the-top dice roll. I keep rolling things, man. 2 dices, man. It's hard to... I've already got that one. I might just have to read a quote.
A number.
Yeah.
Should be
I've already done
this.
Do you know what? I'm just going to pick my...
Roll 1 dice.
I'm just going to pick my favorite quote from the game and read that out. That was number 3, and it's from Harry. It's at the beginning of the game. I think everyone has heard this one. It's, "I want to have fuck with you."
That's a really good one.
So Steve, what will we be talking about next?
All right, lads. So the next game is a big one, pretty much unlike this game, which hardly anyone has heard of. This is a game that I think everybody in the world has played, except me, weirdly enough. And it is The Legend of Zelda: Breath of the Wild. So,
Fantastic.
Yeah, that'll be a fun one.
Looking forward to that one.
Before we finish up, we should probably talk about, follow us on Facebook, on Instagram, on Twitter. And we are From the Top. Also, the cardboard box item sometimes.
Yeah, that's what you'll find us under. The cardboard box item.
Yeah. So if you
links in the description.
We have a YouTube video version of all our podcasts, and that's on the cardboard box item on YouTube. And then if you want us on Spotify or any other podcast platform, you'll find us under From the Top platform.
From the top, and the cardboard box item also on Spotify.
Sean, you're confusing me at this stage.
We should write this down before we do these, shouldn't we?
It's cool, guys. Don't worry. Links in the description. Hit us up there. And please leave any comments on your thoughts on Disco Elysium. Did you enjoy it? Did you not? What was your favorite element of the game?
How much did you disagree with Sean on a scale of 1 to 10?
Listen, anybody out there who feels the same as me, hit me up in the comments. That's because, I know there's dozens of us.
Evil Within fan club saying, "Yeah, Sean, you know all about the good stuff." Yeah.
No, that's a tangent. That's for another podcast.
Oh, Sean's got a secret.
No, it's not
going.
a secret. No, I was just going to let Steve know that I completed the Evil Within 2. I don't know if I told you that already, Steve, but
you didn't.
Yeah, but we can talk about that another time. I'd recommend it to you, but yeah.
Yeah, you'd recommend the first one as well, wouldn't you?
No, but even Michael agreed with me that he thinks you'd like the second one more. But anyway.
Yeah, I think so. But I could have said that just to get Sean to shut up about Disco Elysium or
Disco Elysium. Anyway, tangent. Sorry, continue.
Good night, everybody.
Yeah, goodbye. See you on the next one.
See you then.
Bye.